we choose democracy. So if you got free hands, can you put them together like this? We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate. We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy. Let's say it.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
Yeah, sing it out.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
We're gonna heal the hate.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
We choose democracy.
We choose democracy
Hey.
in this nation.
Come on.
We choose democracy.
We're gonna heal the hate.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
We're gonna heal. Say,
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
let me hear you sing it out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
Let me hear you sing it out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
Say,
hate.
we choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
Now let me hear you sing it out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
We choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
A little bit louder.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
We choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
Now let me hear him sing it out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation.
I can't hear you. Come on, say it. We choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose
One more time.
democracy.
We're gonna heal the hate.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
We're gonna heal the hate.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
Now say this. This is what democracy looks like.
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 This is what freedom looks like.
This is what freedom looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
This is what
Hey,
justice
we're gonna
looks like. We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
Put your hands together, say
We're
it.
gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
We choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose
One more
democracy.
time. Say this. This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what freedom looks like.
This is what freedom looks like.
This is what, hey, justice looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy
Choose
looks
hey,
like.
we choose to heal the hate
in this nation. We choose to
Hey,
heal the hate.
we choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation.
We choose democracy. One more time. We're gonna heal the
We're
hate.
gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
We choose
We
democracy.
choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
Just y'all say it. We're gonna heal.
heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal.
Can't
Hey,
hear y'all
this is-
say.
Yeah,
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose
Hey, we're gonna heal the hate.
gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal.
Y'all sound real good. Sing it.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the.
Sing it like a promise.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
Shout it out. Shout it out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
Say this. Say this is what freedom looks like.
This is what freedom looks like.
This is what unity looks like.
This is what unity looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
This is what justice looks like.
This is what love looks like.
This is what love looks like. We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
We're gonna heal the hate.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the
We
hate.
choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose
One more time.
democracy.
Let me hear you sing it out.
You heal the hate in this nation.
Hey,
We're gonna heal
come
the
on and
hate.
raise your
Yeah, sing it
voice.
out.
We're gonna heal the hate in this nation. We're gonna heal the hate.
We choose democracy.
We choose democracy in this nation. We choose democracy.
Now make some noise. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on justice.
Stayed on justice.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on justice.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on justice.
Hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
hallelujah,
Hallelujah.
Oh,
Hallelujah.
let's say freedom. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on
freedom.
Hallelujah.
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 Let's say justice. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on justice.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on justice.
Let me see you wave your hand. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on justice.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Oh,
Hallelujah.
we give you glory, God.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Let's sing it again. I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed
on freedom.
on freedom.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, it was
Stayed on freedom.
I believe it's stay there.
Hallelujah.
It'll stay right there.
Hallelujah.
Forever and evermore.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom.
Stayed on freedom.
Yeah, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was I believe it, y'all. Yeah, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
To the Most High God.
Hallelujah.
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 Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was stayed on freedom.
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Can we go one more time? I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
I woke up this morning with my mind, and it was
Stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah.
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 Hallelujah. Say
Hallelujah.
hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
It's the highest praise.
Hallelujah.
Oh, say hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
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 And hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
When the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory.
Glory.
Somebody shout glory.
Glory.
Oh,
Glory.
somebody declare glory.
Glory.
Oh, glory. Yeah.
Glory.
Somebody scream glory.
Glory.
Hey, glory.
Glory.
Oh, glory.
Glory.
Hey, glory.
Glory.
Oh, one day the glory will be yours.
Glory.
Oh, one day the glory will be yours.
Glory.
Oh, glory.
Glory.
Hey, yeah, yeah.
Glory.
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 Yeah.
Glory.
Oh, one day.
Right. Let's hear it for the Baltimore choir, huh? Hi, I'm Ben Jealous, president of People for the American Way. Thank you all for being here in the cold and in the COVID. On January 6, 2021, incited by former President Trump and a faction of his allies, including government officials elected to serve the public and defend our Constitution. These militants attacked our Capitol and our democracy, then tried to deny the reality of their insurrection and cover up their role in this deadly attack. January 6th was a violent attack against all Americans and everything we stand for as a country. It was an attack against our democracy. It was an attack against our freedom. The big truth is that the big problem is the big lie. Trump's big lie drove people to participate in this violent attack and has fueled effort in states across this country to pass the biggest wave of voter suppression laws that we have seen since the rise of Jim Crow. Let's be clear. Donald Trump lost the election by an overwhelming vote, more than 7 million votes. The people of America have spoken. And the people who came here to attack the Capitol attacked our nation, our democracy, and everything it stands for. But no matter our color, our ethnic background, our religious background, or our party, most Americans understand the truth and believe that protecting the freedom to vote is essential to protecting our democracy. And we also believe that people who betray our nation, people who endanger the lives of public servants, not only have no business governing in our name, but need to be punished as the criminals they are. We are here today to reflect on the one-year anniversary of this terrible assault, which continues to threaten our democracy. We are also here to lift up a call to action, to support everyone involved in these attacks being held accountable for the crimes they have committed. I want to thank you again for standing up for the best of this country. I was just with my grandma. She's 105. She descends from Thomas Jefferson's grandma by her other grandchildren that were the family's slaves. Her grandfather was born into slavery and served as one of the last black statesmen in Virginia before state-level voter suppression laws made it impossible for men like him to serve. Let us never go back. Let us always go forward. Let us remember that it is the courage and the commitment of people like ourselves to defend the great American dream that has only ever allowed evil to be vanquished and good to triumph and our democracy to prosper. It is my great honor to introduce the Executive Vice President of Public Citizen, Lisa Gilbert, my co-MC for this evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Gilbert, Executive Vice President with Public Citizen, and I'm excited to be co-MCing with Ben Jealous tonight. I am honored to welcome everyone to this vigil. We are here to solemnly reflect on what happened to our democracy exactly 1 year ago. We need to discuss how to move forward together as a country. January 6th was a dark day for our nation, for our democracy, for our right to vote, and to have that vote counted. It was a day where a violent insurrection based on a big lie almost stopped the peaceful transfer of our power. So this January 6th, exactly 1 year later, Americans are standing together at over 350 vigils around the country to make sure that in America, the voters decide the outcomes of our elections. We get to choose the leaders that represent us so that we have a government of, by, and for the people. We are also gathering to remember those that were lost on January 6th. To honor their memories and to recognize the trauma of those who are here at this very day, at this moment, at this spot, who experienced it. We must recognize that we have to prevent this attack from ever happening again. So we are looking to our elected officials to continue to investigate the insurrection, but also to pass urgently needed voting rights legislation and democracy reform legislation that will protect this country from the anti-democratic forces who are continuing their efforts to destroy it. So again, I am so honored to be with all of you tonight. We are going to begin our Vigils program by hearing from those among us who experienced the trauma firsthand in an up-close and personal way. So I am thrilled that we are kicking off our program with Representative Jamie Raskin. Representative Raskin is a true democracy champion. He is the representative of Maryland's 8th District, and he is a member of the 1-6 Select Committee. Rep. Raskin, I'll bring you up.
Jamie.
Nice to see you. Well, hello, public citizens. And hello, natural persons. And hello, democratic patriots here in Washington and all across the country. Hello to everybody who's standing up for democracy. Someone asked me what I'm going to do to observe and commemorate the insurrection. And you know, we don't have a lot of experience with commemorating insurrections in American life. But I decided I'm going to observe the first anniversary of January 6th by celebrating the people who defended our lives and our democracy on January 6th. So could we hear it to begin with for Officer Gunnell and Officer Dunn and Officer Fanone? Can we hear it for Officer Hodges, who was stuck in that doorway for 10 or 15 minutes and then went back out to fight the hordes of fascist mobs that were raining down blows on our officers? Can we hear it for the cops who defended our democracy on January 6th? And where are all those phony defenders of law enforcement who who only rear their ugly heads when some racist cop beats up an African-American citizen. We don't hear from them about January 6th, do we? We stand with the cops like we stand with the firefighters, like we stand with the teachers, like we stand with all public employees, the servants of the people. My friends, I greet the American majority this evening on January 6, 2022. Never forget that Hillary Clinton beat him by 3 million votes and Joe Biden beat him by 7.5 million votes. We're winning our congressional elections by millions and millions of votes. The young people are on our side. The new Americans are on our side. They are a shrinking minority party standing with the most authoritarian, fascistic elements of the whole country. And can we hear it for constitutional patriots like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger who are standing up for our democracy? If you go back and you look at the history of coups and fascism on earth, progressives and liberals can never defeat fascism on their own. It is always progressives and liberals and the center-right that come together to defend democracy. And we're going to do it again here in the United States of America. We are the majority. We are the majority. And I admit that they've got control over a lot of the levers of anti-democratic power in America, like the gerrymandering of our congressional districts, and like the filibuster, and like all of their voter suppression tactics, and like the court packing and right-wing judicial activism. But none of them can beat the power of the organized people of the United States of America. In every state, in every county, and in the Congress. So, we're in the fight of our lives, aren't we? And that's why I'm glad you're out here tonight. And I know there are people fighting for every democracy cause we've got. Do we have any people here who are residents of the Washington, D.C. itself here tonight? Well, I want to say, my friends, we have passed in the House of Representatives statehood for Washington, not once, but twice. And we know that you are the only residents of a capital city on the planet Earth who are not represented in your own parliament. We are going to get statehood for the people of Washington, D.C. We're going to make that happen. And I want to thank the people of Washington because you have a real political grievance. There's a real injustice here. And you know what? You didn't come and beat the daylights out of our officers, and you didn't storm the Capitol, and you didn't shut down the peaceful transfer of power in America. You're doing it the right way. You're building nonviolent popular power, movements for change, the only thing that's ever worked for real in American history. We are the heirs to the civil rights movement. We are the heirs to the women's movement. We are the heirs to the LGBTQ movement. We are the heirs to the environmental movement, the human rights movement, the peace movement. We are the democracy movement, and we're going to save American democracy. So, we got some tough days ahead of us, there's no doubt. But I know that the people here and the people at vigils across the country are standing up for strong democracy in America. We know what our parents fought for. We know what our grandparents fought for. We know what our great-grandparents fought for. We know what prior generations of Americans fought for. And we are a movement that is the heir to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Social Security and Medicare and the Affordable Care Act. We are the heir to the civilizing movements of American history. And if Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and Roger Stone and Michael Flynn think that they are going to steal away from us the products and the progress of American democracy, they don't know who we are. They don't know who we are. Thank you, public citizen. Thank you all for being here tonight.
How are you, brother? Good to see you, man. Thank you. All right. Let's hear Congressman Raskin. And let's hear it once again for all of the officers who stood up to defend our democracy that day. More than 800 from DC responded. And now it's my great honor to bring up my fellow organizer, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and the great Congresswoman from Washington State, Ms. Pramila Jayapal.
Public citizen, people for the American way, Americans who are not going to take any of this lying down but are going to fight for what we deserve and what is right, our democracy. Hello, and we are just beginning. Is that right? Now, this is a somber day for us, and we just came, members of Congress, many of us came from a really beautiful, cathartic experience of giving testimonials about our experience on January 6th, a year ago. And I can tell you I was trapped in the gallery along with some of my colleagues that you'll hear from. And I remember every moment of it vividly. I remember the pounding on the doors of the insurrectionists. I remember crawling on my knees under banisters with a cane in one hand because I had just had a knee replacement surgery 5 weeks before. I remember lying on the floor with a gas mask in one hand and the cane in the other, thinking about how if I couldn't get up and leave, which I didn't think I would be able to, that I would attack the knees of whoever came to attack me, because I wasn't going to take it lying down, not without a fight. And I remember thinking that I may not make it out of there alive, and that we may not have seen our democracy survive. But the thing that I keep with me to this day, a year later, is that we saved democracy. And when I say we, I am not talking about we members of Congress. I'm talking about we the people. All the people who voted that day or that election to get rid of a corrupt president who was trying to steal an election. All the people who ensured that no matter what happened, we were not going to succumb to the insurrectionists, the Capitol Police officers that Jamie talked about. And God bless Jamie Raskin for everything that he has gone through and all the leadership that he has shown as we impeached, as he led the impeachment trial in the Senate, where, don't forget, we got more votes, more bipartisan votes to impeach that president than ever before. It just wasn't quite enough because there wasn't enough courage. There wasn't enough courage and commitment to our democracy at that time. But as we made it out of that gallery, and as we think about it today, I think the thing that is hardest is that this is not something that is a marker of something past. It is actually still clear in present danger. And it is why it is so important that you are here, because everything we believe in is on the line right now. And there is nothing that anyone can do that is more powerful than the collective coming together and insisting we are going to organize and we are never going to give in and we are going to make sure we stand up and we protect this democracy as has been done before and before so many times at so much sacrifice and so much cost. And at the end of the day, being human is a courageous act. And particularly being an activist is a courageous act. Because it's pretty easy to go back and say, you know what, we didn't get what we wanted, I'm done, I'm frustrated, I can't do this anymore, I'm tired. But you're out here on January 6th in the cold because you know that any change we have ever had in this country has come about because people like you got together with other people like you, and it spread. The power of a collective movement for a collective democracy has always been the greatest strength of our democracy. That is what Public Citizen does. That is what People for the American Way does. That is what you do every day when you stand up and you say, I'm going to fight to pass Build Back Better. I'm going to fight to make sure that we have voting rights. I'm going to fight for DC statehood. I'm going to fight for Medicare for all. I'm going to fight for our democracy to deliver the kind of justice that we know is possible. So thank you all so much for that belief, for that faith, for that commitment, for never giving up, because we are far stronger than any of those cowardly people that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Far stronger. Thank you, everybody.
Let's hear it from Ms. Jayapal. Great Congresswoman, great chair of the Progressive Caucus. And now it's my great honor to bring out the good friend of my godfather, Bill Chappelle, our Congresswoman from Washington, D.C., our great patriot and fearless leader, Congresswoman Norton, Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Yeah, thank you for bringing us out on this cold winter night in the face of the Capitol of the United States to commemorate January 6th. Thank you for coming to your capital and to my district, the District of Columbia. Yes, it was 1 year ago today. A day we will never let the country or the world forget. When we witnessed an outrageous assault on this U.S. Capitol as Congress was meeting to count the electoral votes for the last election. The attack was not only an attack on democracy, it was an attack on the District of Columbia where we are now standing. The D.C. Police Department, which is paid for by D.C. residents who are denied representation in the House and the Senate and full self-government, moved voluntarily to save the lives of members of Congress, congressional staff, the Capitol, and democracy itself. Yet, House Republicans thanked D.C. by voting against the DC Statehood bill only a few months after the attack. The Capitol attack focused the world on the lack of local autonomy for the residents of the Capitol of the United States. The president controls the D.C. National Guard, yet the governors of the states and the territories control their National Guards. During the January 6th attack, the former president delayed sending the D.C. National Guard to the Capitol for hours, likely costing lives. Only statehood would give D.C. the full and equal control of its local affairs. January 6th showed it needs and deserves. We have made historic progress on our DC statehood bill in the last few years. Last April, the House passed the DC statehood bill for the second year in a row. In the Senate, there are a record 45 co-sponsors of the bill with our extraordinary Senate sponsor of the bill, Tom Copper of Delaware, making it 46 supporters. And remember, there are only 50 members. And last year, the Senate held the second ever hearing on our DC Statehood bill. Most important of all, and hear this now, according to a very detailed poll, 54% of the American people now support statehood for the residents of your nation's capital. Remember that number. That's more than a majority of the American people. The monument is clearly on our side. As we press for protection for our democracy on this January 6th commemoration, DC statehood is more important and timely than ever. DC residents pay the highest per capita federal taxes in the country and pay more in total federal taxes than 21 states. Our residents have served and died in every American war since the Revolution, which was fought over taxation without representation. On this first anniversary of the unprecedented attack on our democracy, let us make this an occasion to remember the nearly 700,000 residents of our nation's capital lack the same democratic representation other Americans have long enjoyed. Let us remember them by recommitting the nation to making the District of Columbia the 51st state of the United States of America. Thank you.
Statehood now.
Thanks so much to Representative Norton. So we're now going to turn to Representative Veronica Escobar from Texas, 16. She's one of the plaintiffs in the first civil case against Trump, Giuliani, the Proud Boys, and the Oath Keepers following January 6th.
Hello, fellow lovers of democracy. Buenas noches. How are you? You all, thank you so much for being here on this cold January day, the anniversary of a horrific attack against our country and against our democracy. I was one of the nearly 24 members of Congress, all Democrats, who were trapped in the gallery after we had already been surrounded by the insurrectionists, after the bear spray and attacks against our Capitol police officers had begun, after the windows had been broken, and after we witnessed what would be unspeakable horrors against our country. It is a day I will never forget, and I want to express my gratitude to all of you for being here to make sure that our country never forgets. My friends, we are on a precipice right now, and we have a choice to make as Americans. January 6th can either mark the end of our democracy or the beginning of our march towards expansion of rights and justice and equity and fairness for all. And I choose the latter. I choose the latter. And I know that you all have made that choice as well. And so we have to do what generations have done before us. You know, all of us, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, people like my beloved colleague, the late John Lewis, People who marched and were bloodied and were beaten. People willing to put up the ultimate, their lives in defense of the right to vote for themselves and for others. People who were willing to not rest until they achieved justice. Those are the giants of democracy who led the way for all of us. We have to pick up the torch. We have to continue that march. We have to continue that fight because of that precipice that we're on, because of what happened a year ago, because of the threats to our country that exist today. And there's only one way that we will finally achieve that justice, and that is to demand it and to fight and make sure that the Senate hears our voice, make sure that in every community across this country, we are gathering together and saying, ya basta, it is time to defend the vote. It's time to fight for every American's access to the ballot box. We need to make sure that we do this every single day until we achieve that goal, my friends. And your presence here today gives me tremendous hope because I know that the fight for good will triumph over evil. I know it. I see it in your eyes, I see it in your faces, and I know it in my heart. God bless you, and God bless America and our democracy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Representative Escobar, for those really inspiring words. So now I am thrilled to bring up Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, a democracy champion fighting in the trenches with Public Citizen and all of you for years. Come on up.
Hey, man, thank you. It's great to see all of you. Thank you for being here to fight for our democracy, to secure our democracy. All of us know what is at stake, and we've got to act. We saw what happened just 1 year ago today. It was not an attack by a foreign power like we witnessed at Pearl Harbor. It was not an attack from a foreign terrorist group like we experienced on 9/11. It was an attack from within, and it was orchestrated and instigated by the former President of the United States, Donald Trump. And as a result of his actions, you saw thousands of people moving up that hill toward the citadel of democracy. You saw them take bear spray, you saw them take flagpoles and make them into weapons to beat police officers. You saw them take down an American flag and put up a Trump flag. That is not democracy in the United States of America. I want to thank the Capitol Hill Police. I want to thank the DC Metro Police and the National Guard for taking action that day that allowed us to come back and finish the job of certifying the election. They put their lives on the line, and some of them made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our democracy. And we have a duty to make sure we uphold their memory, and we have a duty to the American people. Because all of us know that while the violent mob failed to overturn the results of the election 1 year ago, that the big lie did not end there. In fact, the big lie has metastasized and spread throughout the country. So today, instead of seeing the violent mobs attacking the Capitol, you see that big lie materializing in a different form. You see it materializing in the form of legislatures, Trump Republican-controlled legislators, taking action in state after state to put up barriers to the ballot box. And they're not just trying to stop everybody from voting. They are targeting voters of color. They are targeting younger voters. They're targeting voters with disabilities. As the court said about an earlier effort in North Carolina, they are targeting voters of color with surgical precision. So what we saw here a year ago in the form of a violent coup attempt, we are now seeing in a slow motion coup attempt across this country. And we cannot let that stand. And that is why we have to take national action. We have to pass the Freedom to Vote Act. We have to establish uniform national standards to protect the right to vote of every American in every single state. I had hoped, many of us hoped a year ago, that the gravity of the moment would be fully felt by every member of the United States Congress, every member of the Senate and every member of the House, both parties. And for a few hours that night, I think many of us had some hope that at least some of our Republican colleagues would recognize the moment in history that we faced. But today, in the Senate, we don't have a single Republican member willing to stand up and protect our democracy. That is not a political statement. That is a statement of reality. It's a statement of fact today. And so while we would like to see a bipartisan coalition stand up for the Freedom to Vote Act and for the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, we cannot wait to have that support, which is never coming. And that is why we have to reform the rules of the Senate. We have to reform the filibuster. You know, the original rules of the Senate were not designed to allow a minority of senators to block the will of the majority. It was designed to be a place of vigorous debate. It was designed to be a place of prolonged debate if senators felt strongly about an issue. But at the end of the day, it was designed to allow the majority to work its will and work the will of the American people. Today in the United States Senate, we have just the opposite. You have very little real debate in the United States Senate. A lot of statements, but no real vigorous debate. And you have a filibuster rule in its current form that allows the minority party not even to show up to block a measure and to ultimately be able to allow the minority party or the minority on an issue to block a vote. We cannot allow a minority of senators to override the will of the American people. And that's what this is all about. This is about protecting our democracy, and we can't allow an antiquated, undemocratic rule to stop us from protecting our democracy and making sure we implement the will of the American people. Every American has the right to vote. No state should be trying in this day and age and never to block anybody's right to vote. States have tried that in the past. We've had a long struggle in our country to overcome that. We're not going back. And we need to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, and we need to reform the filibuster to get it there. And we need every one of you to be right here pressing to make that happen, because we are going to have a vote in the United States Senate. We're going to have it before Martin Luther King Day. We're going to have it before January 17th. Everybody needs to be stand up, and everybody needs to be counted in the light of day. And with your help, we will muster the votes necessary to pass the Freedom of Vote Act and to protect our democracy. Thank you all very much for being on the front lines of our democracy.
Let's hear it for Senator Chris Van Hollen. And you know, the Senator and Jamie Raskin reminded us the courage of the officers who defended the Capitol. But let us not forget that inside the Capitol aren't just police officers and politicians. No, there's janitors. There's staffers, there's secretaries, there's legislative assistants. There's patriots every day who come to work in that Capitol, as I did when I was a young page for Leon Panetta. I would sit on a bench outside the cloakroom, my head balanced on a filled-in bullet hole from when the Capitol had been shot up in the 50s. And they come to work knowing that that building's been attacked 11 after that it was shot up in the 1950s, that it was burned down and attacked by British soldiers. That was the White House, but they know the risk that they take in coming there, and yet they come there every day because they are Americans who believe in our democracy and are honored to serve it. And we take them for granted as our neighbors. They're on the buses, they're on the metro. They're like my cousin who was in the last office at the Pentagon to survive on her wing when the planes hit it, who just came there every day as a secretary, not really thinking about the risk until, bam, it happened. And so to me, among the real heroes are the ones who have kept coming back even after they have been attacked. And so let us hear it for Harper White, a young man from Kentucky working for Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut, who survived that day and has come back every day to serve his country as the great patriot that he is. Harper, come on up.
Thank you, Ben, for that warm introduction, and thank you to all that helped organize this vigil. Thank you to the members of Congress who I have the honor of sharing the stage with today, and thank you all for being here. My name is Harper White, and I serve in the office of Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. And on January 6th, I went to work. My boss and mentor had a new office just steps away from the House floor. She was to watch the joint session of Congress and debate from the gallery while I waited in the office. She planned to stay for just 45 minutes and then return to the office where we would vote, where we would work until all votes were complete. Our plans for the day were about to change in ways in which we never thought imaginable. Shortly after she arrived in the gallery and I arrived in my office, an angry, unhinged mob stormed the Capitol. The Congresswoman and her colleagues were told to get on the ground and grab the gas masks under their chairs while an armed standoff took place outside of the chamber. In these chaotic moments, members were rushed to a secure location away from immediate threat. When the House recessed for the first time around 2:15, I knew something was wrong. I called the Congresswoman to see if she knew what was going on. She did not, but she assured me that we would both be okay. I stepped outside of the office, which is located directly outside of the Speaker's lobby, to see if I could find out any other information. After taking just a few short steps outside, someone rushed towards me, asked if I was staff, and then told me to go back into my office, lock the door, and not come out until Capitol Police said it was okay. For over 3 hours, I barricaded myself in the small office alone. I heard gunshots and the police yell shots fired. I heard insurrectionists tugging on my door. I peeked through the blinds and saw the growing crowd heading for the inaugural platform from outside of my window. I did not know what was going to happen, and I was scared. I was in that office until around 5:30 when I was met at the door by 8 Capitol Police officers and escorted to safety. But even during those lonely and frightening hours, I was also reminded of the community that is Capitol Hill. Many staff members who I had never met made calls to the Capitol Police. My boss told those on the other end of the phone, "We do not leave without Harper." Although I was by myself, I was not alone. I had the support of so many, and I will never forget that. Days after the insurrection, Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, who was in the Speaker's chair when the Capitol was breached, talked about the reverence he had for the Capitol on the House floor. He described his first internship on Capitol Hill and what it was like to walk the hallowed halls of Congress and to witness the glory of American democracy up close. Many who work in Congress have shared that experience. The thousands of people that visit the Capitol every year no doubt feel that sense of awe. I have never looked are worked at the Capitol without that reverence, without the awe. But now, in addition, we'll never look at the Capitol without the reminders of that day and the reminders of the fragility of our democracy. I will never look at the Capitol without thinking of the wooden storage unit half my size that I tried to hide in, or the sound that the elevator outside of my office made when it slammed repeatedly for hours against a fire extinguisher that the insurrectionists had placed between the doors to prevent access to my floor. But these reminders do not and cannot discourage our work. Instead, they serve to reaffirm the commitment for government to work for people and the most vulnerable, to not let anyone deter us from doing what is right. And in the years since the insurrection, the Capitol continues to stand for potential, the potential for good, and the potential to keep pushing toward a more perfect American democracy. Today, on January 6th, I went to work. You went to work. We went to work. And when the sun rises tomorrow, we will go to work again, undeterred, together, and more committed than ever. Thank you.
Harper, phenomenal, and thank you so much. Exactly. Senate seats are open. So now I want to turn to Julie Tagan, longtime Chief of Staff for Jamie Raskin, to share her tale.
Hi there. Again, I'm Julie Tagan, and thank you for having me here today to tell my story, because I think that it's important to me to tell my story so that we never forget what happened on this day, because in my mind, that is the way that democracy will prevail. I've worked on Capitol Hill for 17 years in 3 different stints. In my wildest imagination, I never could believe that this could happen in our Capitol. My story is very similar to Harper's. That day at around 1 p.m., I was in Steny Hoyer's ceremonial office off of the House floor. It's about 30 feet off of the House floor, with Congressman Raskin's daughter, Tabitha, and his son-in-law, Hank, who came to see Congressman Raskin give his speech on the floor that day. We could see smoke shooting up from beyond the inaugural platform, and I believed that that smoke was from police getting protesters in order, and not from the rioters who were tear gassing the police. I told Tabitha and Hank that we were completely safe, that there was no possible way that they could get into the Capitol, and I really, really believed that. By 1:45 p.m., I began to get texts that the situation was getting out of hand. At some point, Tabitha and Hank hid under Steny Hoyer's desk, and I barricaded the door. We were told that the Capitol had been breached and that the rioters were over on the Senate floor, and we just waited. And I was terrified beyond belief. And I came to believe that I would die that day. I wanted to crawl into the smallest ball possible and disappear. And as I watched the breach out of the window of the office, terrified, I had this moment where I said to myself, I do not want to die scared. At that point, I got up and I collected weapons from around the room and stood at the door. If I can remember one thing from that day, it's the sounds, because the sounds kept getting louder and louder, and the area by the floor of the House is all marble, so it just reverberated. And they were yelling, "We want Trump. Stop the steal. Where's Mike Pence?" It was just overwhelming, the sounds. I stood with my weapon at the door, and they jangled the doorknobs. We could hear loud bangs as they tried to get into the house floor that was 30 feet away. It was just bang, bang, bang. I stood in front of that door, and eventually, and I don't know time because time meant nothing, we could hear the police outside the door. We were whisked away to safety, and it's a day that I will never forget. I've talked about this a lot, and people ask me, after what you've been through, how do you go on? How do you continue to work here? They also ask, what gives you hope? And I will say that I get hope from my boss, Jamie Raskin. And I get hope from Pramila Jayapal and Veronica Escobar and all of those impeachment managers who worked selflessly to save our democracy. It gives me hope that to come back every day because members and staff are working every day to save our democracy. I want to acknowledge some people who don't normally get acknowledged for their heroism. We've all thanked the Capitol Police a lot, but I actually want to thank the DC Metropolitan Police because they saved us that day. I sat in my perch and looked out, and I saw hundreds of DC Metropolitan Police come into the Capitol, and for a while it made me feel better. It was a relief. I also want to acknowledge the custodial workers who watched in horror and then had to clean up the mess that was our Capitol. They put us in a position where members could go back that night and make their votes. Most importantly, I really want to acknowledge congressional staff that work on the Hill. None of us, and some of you have been staffers, and there's so many of us around the country, we do not do this for glory. We are public servants, and we are always behind the scenes. But the staff who work on the Hill, they are the heartbeat of our democracy. All of us, the staffers, the police, the custodial, and the support staff, they are all the heartbeat of our democracy. You know, in the end, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. What happened on January 6th will have such a lasting effect on our society. We need to do everything possible to protect our democracy. And I thank you for all being here today, working towards protecting our democracy. And thank you for listening to my story. Thanks.
Well, in a moment here, we're going to have a moment of silence. If you have a candle and you haven't lit it, please light it. If you have a candle that's lit, please raise it up. And we're going to turn off the lights just when the moment of silence starts. So don't be bothered by that. The lights will come back on after it. This moment of silence that we're going to take is for all of those who lost their lives, including those who took their lives after the attacks on Capitol Hill. It's for the more than 140 people who were injured that day. It's for every American who saw what happened and was outraged and more committed to standing up for their democracy and making sure that our generations succeed as others have had to in the past, and ensuring that the world's oldest and greatest democracy continues. It's my pleasure to ask to join us on stage the Baltimore Inspirational Choir. They will sing during our moment of silence.
The sound that saves that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now we see.
Let's hear it one more time for them.
Let's hear it for the choir. That was beautiful and inspiring. And we now want to pivot our program to take that inspiration and talk about what we need to do to fix our democracy. And we know we need it. It needs to be protected. We've seen regressive laws pass around the country to limit the right to vote, and we need to pass federal legislation to fix it. So now I am thrilled to bring up Jana Morgan, Director of the Declaration for American Democracy, to talk about one of the bills that we need to pass, the Freedom to Vote Act.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jana Morgan, and I am the director of the Declaration for American Democracy, and we are a coalition of over 240 organizations working together to realize the promise of our democracy by passing critical voting rights legislation. Thanks so much to Ben and Lisa for leading us today, and thanks to all of you for joining us. 1 year ago, this country withstood a violent and deadly attack against all Americans and our freedom as voters to choose the leaders who represent us so that we have a government that is of, by, and for the people. The attacks we saw 1 year ago continue. And we stand here today, the same faction of extremists who attacked our country on January 6, 2021, are hard at work attempting to silence our voices by restricting our freedom to vote, attacking fair districts, and quietly preparing future attempts to sabotage our elections. In the past year alone, Republican lawmakers in 40 states have introduced more than 440 bills with provisions that would restrict voting access. And they continue to be manipulated and motivated by former President Trump's big lie. And that is not how democracy works. Politicians don't get to rig the game in their favor because they lost. In America, voters decide. And the promise of democracy is not a partisan issue, but a calling that unites us all as Americans. And to prevent this kind of attack from happening again, our elected leaders must act now to pass urgent legislation that will protect this country from anti-democratic forces. As Senator Schumer said this week, the Senate must advance systemic democracy reforms to repair our republic, or else the events of that day will not only be an aberration, they will be the new norm. We cannot let that happen. And so we need the Senate and President Biden to join together now and do what it takes to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, which will protect the freedom to vote for all Americans. It will stop partisan gerrymandering. It'll limit the influence of dark money in our elections so that billionaires don't have more of a say than you and I do. And it will prevent partisan politicians from sabotaging future elections. And we must also pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to restore the full power of the Voting Rights Act and DC Statehood. And by doing so, we can realize the promise of democracy for all of us so that we all have an equal say in the decisions that shape our lives and our futures. And we can end the attacks that continue to undermine the foundations of free and fair elections. The future of our democracy is on the line. And as we remember the victims of last year's attack, we also vow to never back down in the face of those who attempt to silence the will of the American people. Failure is not an option. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana.
Thanks, Jana. And to get that done, we need to organize. So I am thrilled to bring up the consummate organizer, my friend and colleague, Executive Director of Move On, Rana Epting.
How are we doing? Folks hanging in there? It's cold out here. So I'm honored to be here with all of you, and I am humbled and so grateful for every single thing that each of you has done to help protect our democracy and to safeguard it from the threats. And to just be in community with one another in this day of remembrance, one of the darkest days in our nation's history. Over the last year, we have watched too many try to rewrite the history of this horrific and tragic day. We have seen too many whitewash what happened in that building behind us. Until this day, just an hour ago, we had Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene spreading the big lie on with their fake press conference. But we know the truth, don't we? We're here today to speak the truth. We will never let those who want to rewrite what happened 1 year ago get away with it. It was a coup. It was a violent and deadly coup. It was an unsuccessful one. But it was an attempt by that person called Donald Trump, I hate to say his name, and more than 100 members of Congress and senators to overthrow the results of a free and fair election, to throw 81 million votes down the drain. It was an attack on all of us, and it is still going on today, like many folks have mentioned already. It was an attack on the building behind us, turned into a sustained attack at all levels of government, on our right to vote, our right to have that vote counted, our right to have free and fair elections, our right to be represented, and equally alarming, it is the continued spread of the big lie that is a vicious attack on the psyche of this nation. And we need those people, the people we elected, in that building to do something about it. The best way to remember one of the darkest days of American history is to work to ensure it can never happen again. So it starts with holding people accountable who led the coup, both the people who stormed the corridors of this building and those who participated, planned, incited, encouraged, and enabled those attacks. We must hold them accountable. But it can't stop there. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to ensure we can continue to have access to the ballot and free and fair elections. We must pass the Protect Our Democracy Act, which will strengthen the guardrails that President Trump abused, restore checks and balances, and curb presidential abuses of power. And we must pass the Freedom to Vote Act and DC Statehood and more. This is not a drill, and all of us here know it. Millions of Move On members out there in this country know it. What happens over the next few weeks matters. It will determine whether we live in a country with free and fair elections, or if we're going to allow one party to systematically destroy the great American experiment. And on this cold night, I'll leave you with this. Do not forget there are more of us than those that tried to take over this building a year ago. Do not forget that 81 million of us showed up to vote in November 2020. We overcame a global pandemic. We marched through threats of violence at the polls. We overcame voter suppression. And when we come together and root in our collective power, we can beat back this attempt to create an authoritarian government and overtake our democracy. Thank you for all you do. God bless all of you. God bless the United States. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Ray one more time. You know, I want to appreciate each of you for being out here. We're almost done. There's just a couple more speakers. But it really does, I think, do all of our hearts good to be reminded how many people and what a diverse array of people in this country are committed to our democracy. And next, it's my honor to bring up Marcia Johnson Blanco, co-director of the Voting Rights Project at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Ms. Blanco.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to our partners in the fight for democracy, People for the American Way, and Public Citizen for inviting me to speak to you tonight. My name is Marcia Johnson Blanco, and for the past 17 years, I've been a voting rights lawyer with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law. We are here today to reflect on a very grim anniversary, an attempted coup to overturn the voice of the people, the vote, which is at the heart of what it means to be a democracy. We must acknowledge that without necessary corrective action by the federal and state governments, we will continue further down a path that is putting our democracy at risk. Throughout our history, we have encountered pushback against efforts to ensure that all voters have a voice in our democracy. It is horribly distressing that a violent mob would seek to overturn the results of an election, the will of the people. It is even more disturbing that in response to this violence, not only did 147 lawmakers vote hours later to overturn the election, and we have 21 million people who do not accept the outcome of the election that was deemed the most secure in our history. Rather than celebrate opportunities that contribute to historic turnout, we have state legislatures that are passing laws making it harder to vote, and are passing redistricting maps that take away the opportunity of voters to elect their candidates of choice. At times such as these, the federal government has stepped in to pass laws such as the iconic Voting Rights Act of 1965 to ensure that we are a true democracy, a democracy where the voice of all voters can be heard and voters and institutions do not fall victim to intimidation and violence. Right now, we are currently dealing with federal action to ensure the right to vote being undermined by procedural rules that were first enacted to make it harder to pass civil rights laws. Now is the time for a different kind of action, a vote on federal legislation that is necessary to ensure that our democracy is saved from the forces that want to undermine it. I truly believe that we will win the fight to secure the best of our democracy, but Congress must do its part. The Senate must act. It must pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. It must pass the Freedom to Vote Act. It must pass the DC Statehood Bill. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 made America a true democracy. We must fight to restore its full protections, and we must fight for all the voting bills that build on its legacy. And we will vote in every election, and we will continue to fight in the streets. Because when we fight, include the voices of all in our democracy, we win. Thank you.
And next, it's my honor to bring up Wanda Mosley, National Field Director of Black Voters Matter. Wanda? Good to see you.
Good evening. My name is Wanda Mosley. I'm the National Field Director of Black Voters Matter. So glad to be here with you today, although I wish it was a little bit warmer coming from Georgia, but that's okay.
Tell the truth.
That's okay. We are here. I want to give a shout out to my colleague and my dear friend, Fanika Miller, our Senior State Organizing Manager in Georgia, who traveled here with me today, because we know that we cannot fully or accurately tell the story of January 6th until we tell the story of what happened on January 5th, 2021. Because that is the day that Georgia shocked the world. That is the day that Georgia delivered the much vaunted trifecta of power in Washington, D.C. And understand, we did this in the midst of a pandemic. We risked our lives. We risked our well-being. There were no vaccines. All we had were masks and hand sanitizer, but we did not let that stop us. And I should also remind you that voter suppression isn't new. Do you remember what happened in Georgia in 2018? So we also had those barriers to overcome. We had false messages, lies from the White House telling us that we needed to send our vote by mail ballots in by UPS and FedEx. We lived in a time where mailboxes that had been in neighborhoods in rural Georgia for 30 and 40 years suddenly were gone. We lived in a time where they got real creative with that voter suppression because they knew we were sick and tired of the oppression that we had lived under. We were tired of fighting for a right that is guaranteed us as residents, as citizens of this nation. And so we organized, we strategized, we hit those streets with our masks and our door hangers and our message of hope, our message of power. We leaned into our culture. We fed our people all under the power building message that we send to say, if we do what's right in this country, the majority will speak and the majority will be heard. And so we bought into that. We leaned into that. We delivered the Senate. We delivered the White House. And now here we are, 366 days later, wondering, hoping, demanding that those who we gave power to will see fit to come back and undo with those who are haters of democracy, those who don't want to see people of color strive, those who want to hold on to power by any means necessary. We have come to D.C. numerous times over the last 6-8 months, been arrested, all because we first asked, we requested, and now we demand, and we will not settle for anything less than passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, passage of the Freedom to Vote Act. President Biden, when you were a candidate, you said you would fight like hell for voting rights. When will that start? When will you fight like hell for my right to vote? Do you understand that we had people die during the runoff election? That at one point, the city of Albany, Georgia, per capita had the third highest death rate of COVID, not in the state of Georgia, not in America, but in the world. And yet still, those people came out, knocked on doors, made phone calls. We lost a dear friend and sister of ours, Pinky Modesti, from COVID. We saw her at the beginning of December, and she did not make it to see the results of January 5th. So when we say stop compromising, stop negotiating, stop discussing and meeting to talk about protecting the right to vote, do something. Time is up. The calendar has changed to a new year. We are tired of waiting. We are demanding that you do something now. Senator Schumer, may I remind you, sir, that you carry the title of leader because of black voters in Georgia. So the next time you find yourself in peril and you call on black voters, don't be surprised when we don't answer. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Wanda. Those fiery remarks, they warm me up. So I am so proud of us for standing here today in the cold, exactly 1 year from the dark day that was January 6th, and reclaiming the space. Today, we talked about how we're going to move forward, how we are going to fix our democracy, and we talked about the solutions that we need and the reforms that we will win. We heard moving personal stories about what happens, real stories for people who experience 1/6 in this very spot. We heard about the critical legislative solutions that we need to win, to succeed, to save our democracy. And now, as Wanda just said, we need the Senate to act, and time is up. So I am thrilled to have been here with you. I am honored that we did this together tonight, that we stood in vigil on January 6th. So thank you all. I appreciate you all, and I want to hand it over to Ben to close us out.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm going to ask everybody in the crowd, just gather together here a bit. So all our brothers and sisters on Facebook and everywhere else, and see everybody who's here. Get your candles out. The choir is going to be coming up. You know, today is my baby girl's 16th birthday. And I'm going to be headed home to see her in a minute. And on the way down here, I was talking to her brother, who's 9 years old. And you know, our kids are growing up in a time when they're a little bit more scared than we were. You know, they're worried about climate change. They're worried about the state of our democracy. The ones that grow up in the Beltway, well, they're worried about what happened here a year ago. And I took a moment to encourage my son and to remind him that through his veins flow the blood of 7 members of the Massachusetts Regiment of the Continental Army, including a boy who at 15 picked up his powder horn and his musket and reported to the fight at Lexington and Concord. I reminded my son that through his veins run the blood of a boy who was born in Appomattox and into slavery and recounted to the papers decades later, walking across the corpses of soldiers to watch Lee surrender to Grant, and went on to serve as a public servant himself. And I reminded my son of his grandmother he just spent time with, who, when she was but a teenager, hid on the floor of a car in Tennessee to evade Klan patrols to get food to black farmers who had been forced off of their land and were being denied access to food because they asserted their right to vote after the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And so as we go home tonight, let us bring the hope that we heard here today, the hope represented by this crowd of people of every gender, of every faith, of every color, of all the folks gathered on Instagram and on Facebook joining us tonight, of every patriot we know. Let us remember that more than 80% of Americans, that includes some who believe in the big lie, also believe in the principles of the Freedom to Vote Act. Let us remember that Donald Trump lost the national popular vote twice. And God forbid he ever be president again. I predict he'll get there by losing the national popular vote again. And so let us commit ourselves. Let us commit ourselves to ensure that democracy matters in the greatest democracy on earth. Let us ensure that DC becomes a state. Let us ensure that the Freedom to Vote Act is passed. Let us ensure that the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is passed. And quite frankly, that both Joes, Joe Manchin and Joe Biden, get the courage that they need to defend this democracy. The courage shown by the officers that day. The courage shown by the janitors that day. The courage shown by Mike Pence that day when he didn't do the bidding of Donald Trump. God bless each of you. Through you flow the spirits of every patriot who has defended this democracy again and again. And I predict our democracy will prevail because of people like us. God bless each of you. Let's hear it for the choir.
We are the world. We are God's children. We are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. Come on, everybody sing it. We are the world. We are God's children. We are the ones to make a brighter day, so let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a brighter day, just you and me. Come on, heal the world. Heal the world. Make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you care enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Heal the world. Heal the world. Make it a better place for you and for me and the entire human race. There are people dying. If you cared enough for the living, make a better place for you and for me. Come on, make a better place. Make a better place for you and for me. Come on and lift those phones up and say, make a better place for you and for me. Oh, make a better place for you and for me. God bless you all.